Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome today to this Fireside chat from EcoITCon. Today, we are going to talk about a very interesting topic. The topic is primarily around the digital carbon markets and how your decentralized finance technology are helping reshape that market. And to talk about this topic, today we have Drew from KlimaDAO. KlimaDAO is a company which is basically dealing with looking at how do they ease up and bring in transparency in this entire carbon credits market. They last year alone, they have facilitated almost $4 billion worth of carbon credit trade. And they are working with over 100 companies to shape up their sustainability and carbon initiatives. Drew heads the Strategic Partnerships Division at KlimaDAO. Very welcome, Drew, to this Fireside chat for this topic.
Thanks so much. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the discussion.
Sure. So, Drew, today what I see is all large corporations primarily have some net zero agenda. They have declared they will go net zero by 2030, 2040, next 5 years, everybody is doing that. And as part of achieving those net zero targets, one of the big aspects that they do is they buy carbon credits, they sell those who have in surplus, they sell it. And that's primarily how they go and achieve their net zero goals. So my first question to you would be is that given this is a market which is ever growing and it's going to explode in coming few years due to the mandates that governments are bringing in as well, what are the current challenges? Why do you think we need technologies like a Web3 and blockchain and all those things to shape some of the transactions here?
Yeah, great question. I mean, this is a market that is certainly under tremendous growth currently. By many estimates, it may be worth north of 50 billion USD by 2030. And it's really driven by the fact that this is a powerful market-based solution to drive finance towards high-impact sustainability projects. Just take one example, consider nature-based projects and forests, right? Almost 15% of emissions globally are due to forest degradation and destruction. And while there have been some policy initiatives to try to protect these areas, really for many of them, what it comes down to is, can you put a price on this land, through the sale of carbon offsets that is more valuable than the money that would be generated from destroying the ecosystem, planting a farm there, raising cattle, and so on. And so carbon offsets have a really powerful role to play there for those types of projects. But of course, the market has scaling issues. There are problems with transparency. There are problems in some ways connecting buyers with sellers of the projects. And there's even issues with just monitoring the integrity of the projects themselves. And there's a variety of interesting technologies that are being developed right now that can help solve those issues. And one of them is the usage of blockchain to actually facilitate the trading of that market. And so that's where KlimaDAO comes in. We're developing infrastructure to facilitate the trade of carbon offsets, connect buyers and sellers, and really scale up demand by developing entirely new markets for carbon offsets themselves. And I'm happy to dive into that once we, I'm sure we're going to explore some of the different technological pieces that we're leveraging for that. But yeah, when it comes down to it is we are working to help scale up this market and increase its impact.
Yeah. So give me a little bit background about these technologies and why do you think these technologies are relevant? I do know that transparency you mentioned right now is a big issue. How are these technologies help shape up? And are there any alternatives at all? If we say we don't want to use these technologies, is there something else on the table today?
Yeah, so let's look at one specific challenge. You mentioned corporates in the beginning and their net zero goals. If I'm a large corporation and I want to go out and source offsets, let's say I want to become carbon neutral for a certain part of my supply chain, for example, I may have to reach out to 20 or 30 traders and brokers on the market. I'm going to try to connect with different types of project developers. And it's going to take me weeks, if not months, to really determine what are the prices available on the market, what are the different projects that are out there, where are they located, and so on. And that's because the market is very opaque and it's dominated by OTC trading between separate parties. And so there's really not, this one-stop shop overview of what's happening in the market. So when you contrast that situation with what we now have on the Polygon blockchain, it's really a day and night experience, right? So on the Polygon blockchain right now, through the usage of AMMs and liquidity pools, and the fact that we have very transparent pricing on our marketplace, as a corporate, I can go onto our dashboard. I can see what's available. Right now, there's over 25 million tons of carbon that have been digitized and brought on the blockchain. And I can sort these things based on the geography of the project, the technology type and how it was implemented. Perhaps I'm looking for renewables, or I'm looking for a nature-based project. And I can find that pricing. I can do all of that within 30 seconds. And then if I want to acquire those offsets and actually claim that environmental benefit, that's another process that takes less than 30 seconds. So it's really about providing a whole new layer of information very quickly to the demand side participants like the major corporates to help them source these offsets more quickly. But there's another aspect as well that I think is really powerful, and it really leverages DeFi and the automation that's possible through smart contracts. And that's something that we call programmatic offsetting. So again, as a corporate, I may hire a consultancy firm to do an analysis of my supply chain, and I want to figure out what are the emissions of transporting certain goods or providing certain services. And classically, this involves a consulting firm and a team of people to go through, collect that data, crunch some numbers, and eventually come out with a total level of emissions for that activity. But increasingly, that process itself is becoming automated through software, where, for example, I may be able to just put in the financial information related to purchases that I've made as a company, and then the output comes a few seconds later with the emissions related to those activities. And this is becoming much more sophisticated through time. It's a really exciting area of technological development, actually. But when you combine that with the fact that you have, in a very transparent way, information about the offsets that are available on the blockchain, what I can do as a corporate is that I can have my emissions automatically computed from that supply chain activity, for example, and then automatically buy, retire, and claim that environmental benefit of certain types of offsets and have the entire process automated. So I can then prove on the blockchain that this business activity is carbon neutral. And that's something that simply was not possible in the past. And we have some really exciting developments there. We're actually working with a group called Provide Services. They're building an SAP module that helps provide this automated carbon accounting solution, plus the ability to then source, buy, retire the carbon offsets in an automated fashion. And again, all enabled by DeFi technologies.
Thanks for delving a little bit deeper into that, right? So if I understand, there are a couple of things that happen when companies want to go carbon neutral. First and foremost, understanding what their emissions are. And as you rightly said, to figure out those emissions, you have a lot of emission calculators today which exist, which was not there probably 5 years back. Today, you see emission calculators for their supply chain. You might see emission calculators for the core work that they are doing. You might see emission calculators from technology standpoint. So you will see several products which help you calculate and automate that part of it. Once that happens, you have to make sure that based on the results of these emission calculator, you have to offset those emissions, right? And that's where, if you have that process also automated through platform like yours, where people can automatically buy certain credits to offset those emissions, and then end-to-end showcase that right from the source of emissions to the buying it, to the entire process of making sure that to the end consumer, if that company is in a consumer kind of a setup, to the end consumer, giving them that transparency that yes, hence we are claiming it as carbon neutral, and not just because it's not just a marketing gimmick. We truly are carbon neutral, and this proves it so. So I think this is a very strong value proposition for companies and corporates to go back to their end customers and talk about it. But my next follow-up question to you would be is that when you look at this entire space, as you rightly said, that the space is upcoming. Few years back, there was not much automation, not much software that was happening there. But another angle to it is that not much of the space is regulated as well today. So how do you see companies like yours helping out in this regulation space, and how can these technologies help there too? Because one of the things would very soon be that regulators would start coming in saying that, please show us how this is actually getting done.
Absolutely. So I think there's two pieces to this. One, I would say, comes back to the transparency and traceability aspect of blockchain on the supply side of the carbon offset industry as well, not just the demand side that I was previously speaking about. The other is just on, what are KlimaDAO's activities in this regard? So I'll highlight that second part first. We advocate for smart regulation in this space. We've had the pleasure of helping inform things like the DAO bill in the US under Senator Loomis. And we continue to speak with regulators that are starting to explore this blockchain space to understand that technology and how it can be regulated in a way that preserves innovation, but of course puts in safeguards as well. And so on that front, going back to the carbon market then, if we talk about transparency, well, people want to ensure that the carbon credits that they're utilizing have integrity, right? Are actually having the impact that they say they have. And thus far in the industry, that's been done through third-party certifications by different players like Verra and Gold Standard, et cetera. And they're groups that help develop methodologies and standards to understand, like, how do we calculate the carbon mitigation or the carbon removal of certain types of projects, right? But blockchain can take this a step further on the traceability piece, because what can happen with a nature-based project, for example, is that we can use other technologies. Could be remote sensing technologies related to drone-based LiDAR or satellite analysis of biomass in different forests. And you can take that data in and then automatically stream that to the carbon offsets that were generated to provide a check if, for example, that forest is still standing, those trees are still growing, there hasn't been a forest fire, or there hasn't been someone cutting down these trees and so on. And so you can kind of provide an integrity score that's continually updated right onto the blockchain for those credits. And then if those credits are issued from a project developer in a registry, and then those are put on the blockchain, you could trace it back all the way from that project to the end demand when those credits are actually retired by a corporate, and have all that secured on the blockchain. So that's a really exciting area that we're starting to look at, because we've launched this new marketplace, Carbon Mark, has the widest selection of carbon offsets available in the industry right now, thanks to the fact that there's 25 million digitized tons on chain. And we're starting to look at how can we augment the data there, right? So if you're a merchant, you're selling your offsets there, can we help you stream in some of that new information from, let's say, satellite monitoring, so that those people that are buying the credits can be sure that, yes, there is impact that's actually being achieved here. We don't need to just rely on a third-party certification. We actually can prove through satellite data and so on that's being streamed in that those credits have the integrity that they say they do.
Yeah. So if I try and look at it a little more further, what you essentially say is one part is calculating your emission, buying the credits to offset it, but now extending the life cycle, we also need to make sure those credits are valid. And that's where your IoT technologies and sensor and drones and all remote technologies, edge computing will start coming into play. Exactly. To say that whatever you bought is still valid and you can still claim certain points against it, right? And then once you of course, finish the life cycle of the validity of those credits, you also have to make sure it retires and it's not remaining in the market for others to again duplicate and say, now we also have these more credits which are there, right? So if you look at it, there's a whole lot of technologies that are coming in. And my question to you, considering a little more techie audience also that we have, is that if you have to pick up 2 or 3 technologies which a developer needs to understand or needs to be very well acquainted with to get into the space, what would that be and how do they get started for it?
I would say, we're working to move this whole verified carbon market onto the blockchain. because at its core, we believe that blockchain enables some very exciting things when it comes to smart contracts and this whole area of decentralized finance more generally, that are very powerful, right? And I can provide a few examples of that. But let me dive into two concepts related there, right? So I'd say for the techie audience out there, if you're a developer, learning the Ethereum and the smart contract development would be something that's beneficial, because I think more and more of the market is going to be tied together through those devices. So why is DeFi important though? Well, one piece would be this concept of composability, right? So the ability that you can essentially combine different types of code together to create more complex applications. So developers can create decentralized applications or dApps. They can interact with one another. They can leverage each other's functionality. And one example of that might be, if you have a decentralized exchange and you have a lending protocol, well, these could be composed together, and then you create a new app. Users can borrow funds from that lending protocol, and then they can trade them on a decentralized exchange, right? The concept of composability is used throughout KlimaDAO's product and service ecosystem. We have a tool called the Retirement Aggregator, which essentially takes carbon offsets from various standards and different types of data structures, not to get too complex, but based on the carbon registry they're coming from and so on. And then we provide one tool where people can claim the environmental benefit from those assets. And we handle all the routing and the moving of the credits between the different decentralized exchanges and so on, all in the background, right? So that's composability. That's a fundamental piece of DeFi that's leading to a lot of innovation. But the other piece is the interoperability. And so that's when you have different blockchain networks or protocols that can communicate with one another and basically exchange information. So interoperability is what allows these different applications to actually work together seamlessly, including across blockchains, which is important because though we operate on the Polygon blockchain, there are other up-and-coming carbon registries, for example, like Regen Network, that operate on a separate blockchain. And so the interoperability component would be allowing credits that are on that blockchain to actually move over to the Polygon blockchain to be used in our products and services. So that data communication there is key. So those are really two foundational aspects that have led to this whole money Legos idea in DeFi, where people can build together. But I call it green blocks when it comes to the whole climate finance space, because it's just very powerful and it leads to a tremendous amount of innovation. And again, this is something that just in the traditional market, you don't have the same type of movement where people can just build together and collaborate like that.
Sure. So blockchain, smart contracts seems to be the key. And as more and more people get into it, you will also see a lot of AI and ML also start coming into play to draw certain analysis and analytics based out of it. So my last question to you would be is that given where the market is going, given how the space is exploding very soon, what would be the top two things that you think will shape up the market for better?
I think there's two really exciting areas. One would be something called digital MRV, so the monitoring, reporting, and the verification of carbon projects themselves. So there's different carbon registries that have working groups now to explore this. And as I said, it's something that KlimaDAO is already looking at. So we're speaking with a group called Chorus, for example. They rely on satellite data and they automatically compute the biomass of different nature-based projects. And then the credits are actually streamed onto the blockchain automatically. So it just relies on that MRV data. You don't have third-party intervention by human. It's all just done securely on the blockchain. I think tools like that are going to be really powerful to give buyers, those big corporates and others that are involved in the market, the assurance that the credits they're purchasing are having real impact. So that is going to be a huge trend. And it's not just nature-based projects. I use that as an example a lot, but you mentioned IoT before. And there's groups that are working with small IoT devices to basically measure the actual effects of energy efficiency upgrades, for example, in large industrial applications that end up producing carbon credits as well. The other piece I would say is on just the automation of offset retirement, and then tying that in to carbon accounting itself. So, I mentioned that SAP example with Provide Services. They're a partner of KlimaDAO, and we're working together on this. They're leveraging a few pieces of KlimaDAO's infrastructure as well. But so if you're a company and you're already using SAP and you're logging in your supply chain data related to the transfer of different goods, if you can automatically compute your emissions every time there's a shipment, and then in the back end, you can also buy and retire, claim that environmental benefit of a certain type of offset that you specify. Maybe it's based on the geography where that supply chain activity took place. So I'm shipping Coca-Cola in Mexico. Well, then I'm going to offset it with a project that's located in Mexico, right? And I can automate that entire process. That is something that I think is really exciting because, again, it's all going to be transparent. It'll be on the blockchain. It's provable. And so, I'm very excited to see how these two developments play out in the year to come.
Thank you so much for giving those two things, Drew, because what I truly believe, as you rightly said, is that once this technology comes into the mainstream, by integrating with existing corporate applications like an SAP or the CRM systems that they have, then it truly becomes an end-to-end automation, which gives a complete transparency to the user, to the regulators, to the end consumers, as well as to the corporates to say that this truly is where we are going towards carbon neutral. So that, I would say, is the key to bringing this entire ecosystem together. And when that happens, you will truly see an ecosystem where you can comfortably say that I'm carbon neutral because of XYZ reasons, right? And these are the proof points to show for it. So it was absolute pleasure, Drew, to speak with you, to understand how KlimaDAO is shaping this entire carbon credits market, what is happening, what is the future outlook looking like. And definitely, I'm sure our audience will have learned many new concepts, as well as would love to get into the space as well through the learning of this entire blockchain and other smart contracts and other technology pieces which are shaping this market today. So thank you so much for coming here and sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. A lot of what I talked about is live. You can trial this and experiment with the tools that we've built. You can go to carbonmark.com right now and view different offsets, buy them, and retire them. And I just note that we are a decentralized, autonomous organization. We're a big group. We've had hundreds of contributors from around the world. So if this is interesting to you, hop into our Discord. We have links on our website, and start to interact with our devs and the other people that are contributing to our project.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks so much, Drew.
Thank you.